Alright, so blessings. So I wanted to do this video to touch on a major turning point in the movie, and that consists of Mufasa's death. I wanted to do this video to talk about the significance slash the symbolic meaning behind Mufasa's death, the role and the impact it had on Pride Rock Posey's death. And those of you that have watched every part in this series that I've done regarding Lion King and certain components that I've spoke about from a spiritual perspective, understand that I've characteristically broken each animal down and what character I, they compare to from a scriptural slash biblical standpoint. I've compared and contrasted the time that we're living in comparison to certain sceneries in the movie and what's about to unfold in times to come. All right, because as I stated in previous videos, there's a lot of subliminal messages that are being perpetuated. There's a lot of spiritual connections that you have to really identify to really understand how certain parts slash certain sceneries in this movie plays out according to the Bible and according to real life. All right, and those of you that have been watching diligently would understand that I spoke about Mufasa's qualities and characteristics and what he withholds within himself as a lion. I spoke about the fact that he represents royalty, he represents rulership, he represents righteousness, he represents dominance, he represents order, and he represents kingship. All right, prince and power. And not to mention the fact that he represents masculinity. All right, and that's a key word right there, masculinity. Why do I mention masculinity? Because number one, that's the type of lion Mufasa was, because he exhibited bravery, he exhibited courageousness, he exhibited boldness. All right, all the qualities and characteristics as to what makes a man a man. Now, when you look at today's society as a whole, that's something that the media, which is all infiltrated by the so-called elites, right? Their agenda is to completely obliterate men from a spiritual, psychological, and emotional perspective. The goal of the devil is to completely feminize this society, and they've done an immaculate job of doing so. All right, because the goal is to make men as weak as possible, make men very feminine, very docile, very weak, and very much incapable, make them completely demasculated. All right, the goal is to completely demasculate men. Why? Because that way the society becomes docile, fragile, very chaotic, very confused, disorder, and that's where Satan has his foothold. That's where Satan can establish dominance and rulership. All right, because people don't know what's going on, people don't know what to do and what they should do in order to reestablish order. Satan can infiltrate his agenda. All right, so the goal is, because Satan understands that the man is the head, and he understands that men in a society where they're very dominant and masculine and exhibit such spiritual power and have all the qualities and characteristics to make society a very strong society, Satan can't win. All right, because it will be difficult to control a society where men are on their A game, so to speak. So Satan has to infiltrate little satanic devices, i.e. the media, to completely turn society upside down. Why? Because Satan is threatened by masculinity. And when you watch the movie Lion King, it compares to Scar. Why? Because Scar was someone that feared Mufasa. Because all the qualities and characteristics and traits that Mufasa exhibited, Scar was completely null and void with regards to those qualities and characteristics. All right, because what you gotta understand about just people in general, when they see that you've got something, whether it's a special ability or certain qualities and characteristics as an individual that you have that they don't have, they identify it immediately and they immediately are threatened. And that's where hate, jealousy, envy is exerted. All right, why is that? Because they're very insecure. They see you as someone that's far superior far dominant and far more capable than they are. And that's how Scar perceived Mufasa. He knew he couldn't take him on in a righteous battle, so he had to be satanic and infiltrate slash plan Mufasa's death. Alright? So then that way Scar could have heir to the throne. Alright? And ultimately it should have been Simba that should have been king after Mufasa at this point, but Scar scattered away Simba by instructing him to leave Pride Rock and never returning, and got his hyenas to attempt to kill him. Wasn't successful in doing so, but just to understand the idea and what the agenda was. Alright? That's how you have to understand how the devil works. The devil is not righteous. He will not deal with things in a righteous manner. He will resort to brutality slash murder slash violence and whatever have you to completely obliterate you physically, spiritually, emotionally, and psychologically. Okay? And that's exactly what you're seeing in today's world. You know, the so-called black man constantly being subject to police brutality, unfair treatment by the law, and whatever have you. And Satan's goal is to ostracize the so-called black man, particularly the strong so-called black man, from the household. Because without masculinity, there is disorder, there is chaos, there is confusion. Alright? Because Satan understands that the woman in charge makes a very docile society, because they understand that women are not built to lead, they're not built to guide, they're not built to take control. Women are naturally just followers by nature. Okay, so this is why it's important to understand the devil's goal, to understand the devil's agenda. All right, and I've touched on the fact in numerous videos that Scar and Esau are very much in alignment with regards to their qualities and traits and characteristics. All right, not just from a physical attribute perspective, but from the internal perspective. All right, the same goal, the same devious slash demonic type of individuals that they respectively are. Okay, so with regards to Mufasa, after he had been killed, well, let me just say this: before Mufasa had been killed, understand that Pride Rock was in fact a rock. Why? Because it was solid. There was righteousness, there was order, there was just nothing but righteous dealings. There was love, the land was fruitful, you know, people were thriving, people were flourishing, people were very much healthy, people were happy, people were in a state of positivity. But when post Mufasa's death, Pride Rock became very dark. All right, it became very satanic, it became very evil. It was not as righteous. People were starving, people were thirsty. All right, and when you look at today's world, that's exactly what it is. It's a very dark satanic world. You know, many people are starving, many people are thirsty. There's essentially many countries and many people all over the world are very much impoverished. They're in poverty. All right, and the Bible makes it very clear that when the wicked are in rulership, the people mourneth. Okay, and that's exactly what the case was with Scar. When Scar was in rulership, it was a very mourning situation. And Scar showed that he did not care about the people at large. And that's exactly how Esau is. He doesn't care about the people at large either. Alright? Doesn't even really care for his own people. Why is that? Very simple. He doesn't have a heart. He doesn't deal with righteousness. Okay? So, just getting back to this, Mufasa's death is very much symbolic to how society is today. Masculinity, power, prominence, rulership, dominance, whatever have you, is all a threat to the devil. So the idea is to completely ostracize men that have these traits. All right, and this is why I make it very clear. It's important to understand that there's a lot of spiritual connections within this movie Lion King in comparison to reality. Okay, and pay attention to these movies. I can't stress that enough. I stressed that a number of times in this series. You have to pay close attention, because there's a lot of parallels. You just have to have the spirit of discernment to understand what's really going on. Okay, so once again, masculinity, prominence, power, rulership, dominance, kingship, all those attributes is something that the devil fears, because once again, the devil does not or maintain or even acquire or ascertain those respective attributes and qualities. Okay, so that's why the result to violence, the result to murder, the result to brutality, okay, to alleviate the threat that they endure within themselves, because they're very insecure, they have low self-esteem. So the way they feel great and the way they feel powerful is to completely just do the things that I mentioned. Okay, so that's what I wanted to touch on and make clear as to what this symbolic meaning of Mufasa's death represents, because it is very, very huge. Okay, because once again, in this movie, from when Mufasa was offed, okay, when he was murdered, that was the significant turning point in the movie, because it just went from light to dark, okay, from righteousness to unrighteousness, okay, from rich to poor, because rulership went from one that was righteous, one that was very much a saint, to someone that was very evil and satanic. All right. So just thought I'd just do a quick video just to break down the spiritual aspects of Mufasa's death and what it represented, slash what's its symbolic meaning when you compare it to the reality of this modern society. Okay. So this will probably be, if not my last one, I'll probably have one more video to make about Lion King, and that will be my Lion King series done, assuming this isn't my last one, of course. But that's essentially the key points I wanted to touch on. Anyways, catch you on the flip.